continue then on this particular topic then, and we speak to Advocate Romeo Nthambeleni to unpack the extradition process that the Gupta brothers would have to undergo and go through. A very good afternoon to you, Advocate. A pleasure to have you on our show.
You, Flo, and the viewers.
Let's talk about the ratification of the extradition treaty between South Africa and the UAE. What are the specifics, and are we at a point where the extradition process would be an easy process?
Yeah, thanks, Flo. I think let's start with extradition. Extradition is in international law, it's a process by which one state, upon the request of another, effect the arrest of a persons that are charged in that particular country to be returned to the to the country where the crimes are committed, from where they have actually taken refuge. And you're quite correct that there was an agreement on or about 2018, which was entered into by South Africa with the UAE to actually extradite this fugitive of justice, being the Gupta brothers. And yesterday, this culminated into the arrest after they were put on the red list by Interpol, and then they were flagged, and then they were arrested, as the reports we have just had now.
The ratification of this particular treaty, was it necessarily for the sole purposes of targeting the Guptas? We would have known that around that time was when the Gupta name started being out there, and certainly around the time that Interpol would have red flagged them. But was this really this treaty, the ratification of this particular treaty, in order that should the Guptas be in the UAE, that something is done about it, and that indeed they can be sent back to South Africa? And I think also, if we can talk about the reality of that, will we find a situation where the UAE says, here you go, they're arrested, and bring them to South Africa?
Thank you very much, Flo. I think the agreement was strengthened by what was happening in relation to the investigations that were done to the Gupta brothers, and the NPA started to actually liaising with the Department of Justice to actually seek assistance when they were doing investigations after the Gupta brothers left the country. And it took a bit of time for the agreement to be entered into by the two countries. And then after it was entered into, then it culminated into this arrest. But as you are rightfully saying, that when this is done, we are expecting that they're going to ask for bail where they are. Yeah. And then the legal processes of the particular country which they are arrested in have to actually unfold. So we can't celebrate too early, thinking that we'll be seeing them tomorrow at OR Tambo International Airport in chains. That is not going to be the process that happens in extraditions, because it involves international law and Interpol and other countries as well. And proper evidence has to be led. They are going to have their legal representatives. They will go through the bail processes, the normal processes that you see in proceedings in court. And when all that has been done, then the process of extradition can be finalized. And it might take a long time then. And we anticipate. Yeah,
Advocate, as you rightly say, we shouldn't really expect the Guptas to just arrive anytime soon at OR Tambo. But and I think let's continue talking about the rights that they have. And I would assume that they would be having some very good and powerful lawyers wherever they are at the moment. So apart from what you mentioned, that they would be applying for bail, let's talk about some of their other rights at this time. No doubt that people, when they are fleeing justice, they do certainly fight extradition. I mean, we've seen enough of these sort of documentaries on people who are fugitives of justice being able, as you say, for many years to evade justice and to evade being extradited in the first place. And no doubt when we're talking about people with deep pockets, this is more likely than the usual person. So apart from then, and I assume when you're saying that they're applying for bail, that's probably what's happening right now. What then happens? What are their rights from this point onwards?
Yeah, depending on the law in UAE where they are in relation to bail and the conditions of bail, and the challenge is that they were already on the red Interpol of Interpol, and then they left South Africa without permission. So that creates a problem when you're actually seeking bail to actually prove that you are not going to actually be a fugitive of law, and they were arrested under a warrant. It doesn't help them. So I think let's first see whether that bail succeeds, and the grounds, if the bail is refused, as to how long will they be kept. And after that, as you've correctly said, they should be having very, good legal representatives that are going to actually plead their case. And then after that, then the process is, because we can confirm that the NPA has indicated that there is a team that was dispatched from South Africa to work with the UAE in terms of the case. And then what the NPA is simply doing, therefore, is to make sure that they indicate to UAE and the Interpol and the international community that there's a strong case for the Guptas to actually answer in South Africa in relation to money laundering. And then when they can be able to prove that, then the extradition process will begin in earnest, and then the proceedings of extradition will unfold in court, wherein when extradition is confirmed by the UAE, then the process of bringing them back to South Africa can actually start when the court has confirmed that they indeed have a strong case to actually answer in South Africa, and they were involved in it, and the state can prove it beyond reasonable doubt, and there is witnesses on those cases that will come and testify that these were indeed the right people that were involved in this kind of money laundering and all these cases that they are being charged with in South Africa. Thereafter, we can then see the process of extradition being finalized, and then them being brought to face the law in South Africa.
Advocate Romeo, you talk about the role of the NPA. What is the biggest role that they play at this time when it comes to the reality of the extradition of the Guptas? I mean, you talk about the fact that they have to show proof that in fact there was money laundering happening. Do they then? I mean, we watched, of course, the Commission of Inquiry into state capture, and there seem to be some issues when it comes to actual hard evidence of that, and I would assume that they did things in such a way that it would be perhaps quite difficult to provide evidence of the criminality. How heavy is the burden on the NPA to provide that kind of information? Absolutely,
you are right. No, Flo, the burden is quite heavy. They will never be extradited if there is no proof that the allegations have been professed against them are true. So hence the NPA, we believe that throughout these processes of extraditions, when they started, they were already investigating the case, and they were already having witnesses that were lined up. And then we know that in other cases there were other people that allegedly were working with them that were arrested. Perhaps there's information there. So, but this information remains very confidential information to the state and the NPA, and I'm sure they exchange it with the authorities there to actually indicate that there is a strong case to actually answer. And we can be rest assured that I think the warrant was released on that basis, that NPA, a prima facie, has indicated that there is indeed a strong case to answer, and they've lined up witnesses where they will be able to secure a conviction. And I believe that the warrant was released on that particular strength of the evidence that the NPA brought, which they were doing all along since this process is actually started.
All right, Advocate Romeo, always a pleasure having you on the show. Informative indeed. We appreciate your time. That's Advocate Romeo Nthambeleni, unpacking the extradition process that the Gupta brothers would have to go through, and certainly what's required from our side, and certainly the NPA to see that happening.